I always believed that love, true love, was supposed to lift you up, to heal the cracks, not deepen them. But maybe that belief was just another foolish dream I clung to, like the way a man drowning clutches at driftwood. My name is Marcus. I'm 38 years old, and this is the story of how the woman I gave everything to used me, lied to me, and shattered me in ways I never thought possible. We met in the most ordinary way. A coffee shop on 3rd and Elm. She spilled her drink on me accidentally, she said, and apologized with this nervous, radiant laugh. Her name was Julia. Smart, funny, effortlessly beautiful. There was something about her that felt like home. Or maybe I just wanted it to feel that way. We started dating not long after. She was a little younger than me, a few years maybe, but mature and driven. At least that's what I thought. She had dreams of owning her own boutique, fashion design, creating something beautiful and lasting. I admired that. I wanted to support it. I had just gotten promoted at the finance firm I'd worked at for nearly a decade, so I could afford to help. And I did, gladly. We got married after 2 years. A small ceremony, just a few close friends and family. I remember the way she looked at me that day, eyes shimmering, voice trembling as she said her vows. I thought, this is it, this is forever. But forever is a word we throw around too easily, isn't it? The first few years were good, at least on the surface. I paid for everything. Our apartment, her startup costs, travel, dinners, even her business mentor. I didn't mind. I told myself it was love. And love, well, love meant sacrifice. It wasn't until our 4th year that I started noticing the distance. She'd stay out late, claiming she was networking. More and more texts came with the excuse, just meeting a potential investor, or having drinks with the girls. The thing is, I wanted to believe her. I really did. So I shut off that quiet voice in my head that whispered, something's off. The turning point, oddly enough, was my birthday. She forgot. I came home that night to a dark apartment. No candles, no dinner, no Julia. Just silence. I sat there on the couch for 2 hours before she finally walked in, makeup smudged, heels, fan hand smelling like a cocktail bar. She said, "Oh my God, babe, I totally lost track of time. Let's celebrate this weekend, yeah?" I smiled and nodded, said it was okay. But inside, something small, cracked. It's strange how you can live with someone, sleep beside them, even kiss them, and still feel entirely alone. I started noticing little things. Her phone always faced down, the way she flinched when I walked behind her while she was texting. Once I picked up her coat from the dry cleaners and found a receipt for a dinner, 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, from a place neither of us had been to in months. The name signed on the credit card was mine, but the dinner wasn't. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. Not for revenge, but for truth. I wanted to believe I was wrong, but the universe has a cruel way of confirming our worst fears. It happened on a Sunday. I had gone to visit my mother, and when I returned, I realized I'd forgotten my phone at her place. As I walked into our apartment to grab Julia's phone and call mine, I saw it, her phone buzzing on the counter. A message lit up the screen. It was from Ryan. Ryan, my best friend since college, the guy who gave a speech at our wedding, the one who toasted to a eternal love with tears in his eyes. The message read, "Last night was amazing. I still can't believe we got away with it. He's so clueless." I stared at it. I must have read it 20 times, hoping the words would change. That maybe it was a joke. Maybe anything. But it was real. The woman I loved. The woman I gave. Everything to was sleeping with my best friend. And they thought I was clueless. I put the phone down. My hands weren't shaking. Not yet. I just felt cold. Like someone had opened a window inside my chest and let the air out. That night I didn't say anything. She came home late again, said she was working on a design deadline. I watched her lie to my face. She kissed me on the cheek, like nothing had happened, and I let her. Not because I forgave her, but because I needed time. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It just sits inside you, quiet and burning. That's the kind of pain I carried as I lay beside her, staring, at the ceiling, wondering when exactly my marriage had died and whether it had ever really lived. I don't think people realize how easy it is to fake normal. We had dinner the next evening, takeout from that Thai place she liked. Julia talked about her latest fabric supplier, how excited she was for a new client. I nodded, responded when I had to, smiled in the right places. But I was somewhere else entirely. I had replayed that message in my head 100 times. Last night was amazing. I found myself studying her more closely now. The way she smiled when she looked at her phone. The little smirk that crept up when she thought I wasn't watching. I started noticing how little we touch these days. No casual brushes in the kitchen, no goodnight kisses, no I missed you hugs. It was as if she had already emotionally packed her bags, and I was the only one who hadn't noticed. I still hadn't told her I knew. I was buying time, not to catch her. That part was done. But to understand something deeper, why? Why betray someone who loved you? Why cheat when you already had everything I needed to know, not to fix anything? There was nothing left to fix. But I guess closure. So maybe I wanted to see if she'd admit it herself. One night I brought up Ryan. "Hey," I said casually over dinner, "have you seen Ryan lately?" She blinked. "Just a little too long." "Ryan," she repeated. "Not really. He's been busy, hasn't he?" She picked at her food like nothing was wrong. But I saw it. The way her eyes avoided mine, the way she shifted in her chair. I nodded. "Yeah. Weird, though. He texted me the other day. Said he ran into you downtown." She stopped chewing. "Oh. I mean, maybe. I was out shopping last week. Her." Voice cracked, just a fraction. But it was there. That tiny stutter in confidence, that misstep. I smiled. "He said you looked great." "Did he?" She forced a laugh. That fake kind people use when they're trying to hide something. I let it go. For now. That night, I didn't sleep. My mind was spinning with what-ifs and memories and fragments of conversations I had ignored for too long. In the morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened her laptop. I didn't need a password. She never changed it from the default we set up years ago. I wish I could say I was surprised by what I found. But by then, the surprise had burned out, replaced by numbness. There were emails, messages, photos. Some of them were from Ryan. Others were from men I didn't even know. Apparently Julia's boutique hadn't been doing well. She hadn't told me that. Instead, she'd been asking for money, borrowing from different men, promising them investments or returns. But it wasn't business she was offering them. It was something else. She used me for stability, and them for attention. For excitement, maybe for power. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I felt something worse. Emptiness. For weeks after that, I played along. I acted like the loving husband. I made breakfast, kissed her forehead, went to work, came home, rinse and repeat. But every moment I was building something in my mind. Not revenge, just an exit. A way to leave with my dignity intact. Then, something strange happened. She started being nice again. Suddenly she was cooking dinner, leaving little notes on the mirror. "Have a great day, babe. Proud of you. Love you." She even suggested a weekend getaway, something we hadn't done in over a year. At first, I thought maybe she felt guilty. Maybe somehow she knew I knew. But no, it wasn't that. It was fear. Ryan had stopped texting her. He ghosted her entirely. I found out why a few days later, when I ran into him in the parking lot behind my office. He looked nervous, pale. "Marcus," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Look, man, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go that far." I said nothing, just stared at him. He continued. "She told me you guys were separating. Said you didn't care. I should have known she was lying." I still said nothing. "She used me, too," he mumbled, almost to himself. "Took money. Told me she was investing it in her store, but she never paid me back, and when I asked about it, she just stopped responding. That was the moment I realized. I wasn't the only one. Ryan was no saint. He betrayed me. But I could see now, he wasn't in control either. Julia had played him just the same. That night, when I got home, she greeted me at the door with a kiss. Told me she missed me. called me babe like she used to. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone I no longer recognized. I smiled. I kissed her back, and in my head I started to plan. Something shifted after that night. Not in her, in me. I no longer felt like the same man who waited up late hoping she'd come home, who memorized the sound of her lies and tried to believe them anyway. No, that man had died the moment I looked. Ryan in the eyes and realized just how far she'd gone, how many people she had used, not just me. I started waking up earlier. I started running again. I stopped asking her where she was going or when she'd be home. I stopped caring about her excuses. And it was in that quiet indifference that something else happened. She noticed. "Hey," she said one evening, leaning against the kitchen counter. "You've been distant lately." I didn't look up from my coffee. "Have I?" "Yeah," she replied, voice tinged with something between concern and suspicion. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine." And I meant it. Because, for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground again. I wasn't desperate for her attention, for her validation. I had seen the truth, and now I was just walking through the ashes of what was left, preparing for the cleanup. What surprised me was that the more I pulled away, the more she tried to pull me back in. She started acting sweet, overly affectionate, suggesting date nights, cooking breakfast before I even woke up. She even brought me coffee at work one day with a note that said, "For the best husband in the world, I'm so lucky to have you." But it was too late. The words didn't land. The warmth felt staged. What she didn't know was that I had already started putting the pieces in motion. I hired a private financial advisor to audit every shared account. I began separating my assets slowly, discreetly. I opened a second bank account in a different name. Transferred small amounts, just enough not to raise suspicion. I spoke to a lawyer. I learned things I should have known long ago. How she'd secretly leveraged my name for a business loan. How she'd quietly refinanced our apartment behind my back. My name was on everything, but her hands were behind the debts. She didn't just use me emotionally, she buried me financially. That realization, it was the final nail in the coffin. I remember sitting in the lawyer's office, staring out the window while he explained my options. And all I could think was, how did I let it get this far? Because I loved her? Because I trusted her? Or because I couldn't bear the thought of starting over? Whatever the reason, I had wasted enough time. I started documenting everything. I took screenshots of messages, saved every receipt, tracked every withdrawal from our joint account. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. When you've been used so thoroughly, so completely, there comes a point when survival becomes your only priority. And yet, even as I built my quiet case, I never once yelled, never confronted her, never accused. Instead, I played the part, smiled, kissed her cheek, listened to her stories. It was like watching a play you'd already read the ending to, except the lead actress didn't know the audience had turned the page. There was one night, though, when she almost broke me again. We were lying in bed. She curled up next to me, rested her head on my chest and whispered, "I'm sorry I haven't been a good wife lately. I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel like I've been spiraling." She sounded so small, so sincere. For a second, I almost believed her, but then I remembered that message. Last night was amazing. I still can't believe we got away with it. I looked down at her and said, "We'll be okay. Just give it time." She nodded, kissed my chest, and fell asleep. I stared at the ceiling again, just like I had on the night everything fell apart. Only this time I wasn't lost. I was waiting. A week later, I got a call from Ryan's wife. Yes, he had a wife too. Her name was Erin. We had met once at a holiday party years ago, but never stayed in touch. She told me she'd found some emails. That she had suspected for a while. That Ryan had confessed everything. I didn't say much, just listened. Before she hung up, she said something I'll never forget. "You deserved better." And she never did. That night I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop and wrote Julia a note. Not a goodbye, not a threat, just a date and time. Dinner, Just the two of us. Friday, 8 p.m., at her favorite restaurant. She found the note the next morning and smiled at me like a teenager again. Kissed me on the lips and said, "I can't wait." Neither could I. Because that would be the night the lights finally came on. That would be the night she realized the game was over and I had been playing all along. The restaurant was one of those dimly lit places where the ambience did all the heavy lifting. Exposed brick walls, jazz playing softly in the background, candles flickering at every table. Julia always said it made her feel like we were in a different world when we came here. That night she dressed like she cared again. A deep burgundy dress, gold earrings I'd given her for our anniversary. One of the few things she hadn't pawned off or misplaced. She smiled when she saw me across the table, and for a moment she looked like the woman I once fell in love with. But only for a moment, because now I could see behind the mask, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the way she laughed, a little too loudly. She was nervous, and she should have been. We ordered wine. She reached across the table, touched my hand and said, "I've missed this." I didn't pull away. Just looked at her and replied, "Yeah, it's been a while." Small. Talk came next. She talked about new suppliers, a possible investor, how things were finally turning around at the boutique. She even joked about taking a trip together, maybe somewhere quiet, just the two of us. I nodded, listened. Let her build the fantasy, and then when the waiter brought the main course, I said calmly, "I need to tell you something." She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. "Okay," she said cautiously. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "I know about Ryan." The air left her lungs like someone had punched her. "I know everything," I continued. "The messages, the hotel charges on our card, the dinners, the lies, all of it." She blinked rapidly, eyes darting around like she was searching for an escape. "Marcus," she whispered. I can explain." I held up my hand. "Don't. Please." She sat back, deflated. Her hands trembled as she clutched her wine glass. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "It was a mistake." I looked at her dead in the eye. "You did it more than once. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern." She opened her mouth, closed it again, then tried a different tactic. "I was lonely, Marcus. You were always working, always distracted. I felt invisible." I tilted my head. "So your solution was to sleep with my best friend and ask him for money too?" Her face went pale. "Yeah," I said, voice still even. "He told me, and so did his wife." Now she looked like she was crumbling from the inside out. "Please," she whispered. "I know I've done horrible things, but I'm trying. I've been trying these past few weeks. Haven't you noticed? I've been better. I've changed." I looked at her for a long moment. "You've changed because Ryan stopped responding, because the other men stopped paying. You didn't come back to me out of love, Julia. You came back because you ran out of options." Her mouth hung open. She had no defense left, no spin. And then I said something that finally broke her composure completely. "I've spoken to a lawyer," she gasped. "Wait, you're divorcing me?" I nodded. "The paperwork's already in motion. We've been building the case quietly. Everything's documented, the financials, the infidelity, the lies." She looked like she might pass out. "I never wanted it to end like this," she said, voice cracking. "I thought maybe we could fix it." I sighed, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, almost. But then I remembered every night I'd stayed up waiting, every time I questioned my own worth. Every time I looked at her and thought I wasn't enough. "You broke it, Julia," I said softly. "You shattered something I can't glue back together." Silence fell between us. She wiped a tear and muttered, "You won't get away clean. You think people won't believe me if I tell them you were controlling, abusive, that you drove me to this?" I met her gaze, cold, unflinching. "I recorded this entire conversation," I said, "and I have all the messages. Try me." That was when the panic truly set in. She stood up suddenly, chair screeching behind her. "Enjoy your little victory," she hissed. "But you'll be alone, Marcus. No one will love you after this. You think you're winning, but you're pathetic." I didn't respond. Just watched as she stormed out of the restaurant, heels clicking, fury in every step. I sat there a while longer, sipping my wine, letting the weight of the moment settle. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was just free. And that, for the first time in a long time, felt like something close to peace. The morning after our dinner felt quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes with peace, but the kind that lingers before a storm breaks loose. I woke up early, made myself coffee, and sat by the window as sunlight painted the walls. I felt like I was watching my life from the outside, like a movie where the final act had just begun. Julia hadn't come home, and strangely, I wasn't surprised. I had no idea where she spent the night, and honestly, I didn't care. All I knew was that the facade had finally cracked in front of her. And for someone like Julia, someone who thrived on illusion and control, that crack would be enough to unravel her. By noon, I received the first message. "We need to talk." Then, "Please, Marcus, don't do this." And finally, "Can we fix this? Just tell me what you want." She called 7 times. I didn't answer. Not out of pettiness, but because I knew she wasn't calling out of love. She was calling because she'd realized she was no longer the one holding the strings. That same day, I met with my lawyer again. We went over every document, every financial record, every piece of evidence. He looked up from the thick folder and said, "We're ready. You have a strong case. She'll have a hard time touching any of your assets. If anything, she may end up owing you. That wasn't why I did it. I didn't want to ruin her. I wasn't out for blood. But I wanted to make sure I walked away with something she couldn't steal from me. Dignity." Later that evening, I finally responded to one of her texts. "I'll be home by 7, be there." When I walked into the apartment, she was already waiting, sitting on the edge of the couch like a child waiting for punishment. Her makeup was smeared, eyes red from crying. She stood as soon as she saw me. "Marcus, please, I was stupid. I know I was, but I want to change." I walked past her, calm and silent, placed my keys on the counter, then turned to face her. "I believe you want to change," I said, "but I don't believe you can, or that I should be the one you try to change for." Tears welled up again. "Don't say that. You said you loved me." "I did," I said, "but love doesn't survive in lies. It suffocates." She stepped forward like she might reach for me, but I took a step back. "I'm not here to fight, Julia. I just came to give you this." I handed her a manila envelope. Inside was a printed agreement, a temporary arrangement prepared by my lawyer. It allowed her a small financial settlement, enough to transition to her own place for a few months, as long as she signed away her claim to the apartment and the remaining savings. Everything was fair, documented, legal. She flipped through, the pages stunned. "You already did this?" "Yes," her face hardened. "So that's it? After everything, you just erase me like I'm nothing?" "No," I said. "You erased yourself. I'm just finishing what you started." She laughed bitterly. "You think you're better than me now, don't you?" I didn't answer. "Who even are you?" she snapped. "You used to be quiet, soft. You never stood up for yourself." I gave her a long look. "I'm still that man. I just finally realized I deserve more than what you gave me." And then I said something that stopped her cold. "I also spoke to the boutique's landlord. He said you haven't paid rent in 3 months and that he's filing for eviction." Her mouth dropped open. "You... what?" "I didn't tell him to," I said. "But he came to me when he realized whose name was on the co-signing papers. Mine. He thought I should know." Her lips quivered. The humiliation washed over her like a wave. "And the money you borrowed from Ryan," I continued. "He's demanding it back. His lawyer's already involved." She looked like she might collapse. "Why are you doing this to me?" she whispered. "I'm not doing anything to you," I replied. "You did this. I'm just walking away before you can do more." She sat down, defeated, clutching the envelope like it burned her fingers. "I have nothing," she muttered. "I gave up everything for you." "No," I said quietly. "You gave up me for everything else." I walked toward the bedroom, packed the last of my things into a duffel bag, and came back out. She was still on the couch, staring at the floor, like a broken statue. I paused at the door. "I'll be back in the morning with movers," I said. "You'll have a week to figure out your next steps. After that, I want the apartment back." She didn't reply. I left. The air outside was cold, but it felt clean, fresh, like I could finally breathe again. I didn't have a plan for what came next, no idea where I'd stay long-term, no desire to date or explain anything to anyone. but I had myself again. And that was enough, for now. A week passed. I kept my distance. Stayed at a friend's spare apartment downtown, someone Julia had never met, and who didn't ask questions when I showed up with nothing but a duffel bag and tired eyes. I needed the space, not just physically, but mentally. That week I finalized everything. My lawyer filed the paperwork. Bank accounts were closed, the joint ones emptied, her share already wired over with a detailed breakdown and receipt. I wanted to be done right. Clean, no loose ends, no courtroom drama, just facts. But I wasn't quite finished. There was one thing left, closure, not for me, for everyone else. For too long I had been the fool, the blind husband, the man people pitied, and though I'd let it go in silence, the truth deserved to be seen, not shouted, just revealed. And I knew exactly when to do it. Ryan's company, yes, he had started one recently, ironically using money he'd saved up from bonuses I once helped him negotiate, was holding a launch party. His wife Erin had already left him, but he'd kept the event on the calendar like nothing had changed. Some people cope with shame by pretending they're still winning. The event was public, invitation only on paper, but easy to get into if you knew someone, which fortunately I did. I showed up in a simple suit. Nothing flashy, just clean, confident. Julia was there. Of course she was. She clung to a glass of champagne like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She wore a black dress that screamed still relevant, but her eyes told another story. Nervous, darting, searching. And then she saw me. She froze mid-sip. I gave her a nod. Calm, cold, but polite. Ryan saw me next. He looked like he'd swallowed a stone. I walked straight toward them. "Marcus," Julia said first, voice brittle. "What are you doing here?" "I came to congratulate you both," I said. "It's a big night, right?" Ryan cleared his throat. "It's not a good time." "Actually," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket, "it's the perfect time." I tapped the screen and handed it to Julia. On it played a short video, just 2 minutes. Her voice, clear, calm, recorded at the restaurant during our last dinner. "I used you. I was stupid. I know I was, but I want to change. You came back to me because you ran out of options. You think people won't believe me if I tell them you were controlling. All of it. Unedited. Truth captured in the moment when masks slipped, her face drained of color. I also backed it up in a cloud folder," I added, voice low, just for her. "Along with all the bank records, the boutique lies, the hotel receipts, the loans from Ryan, everything." Ryan flinched. "You gave him money." He turned to her. Julia tried to speak, but nothing came out. That was my cue. I turned, scanned the room, and spotted the event photographer. I walked right up to him and said, "Mind taking a picture?" He raised his camera instinctively. I turned. Back to Julia and Ryan, still frozen in place, and I smiled. Click, one last image, one last memory, one last nail. Then I left. I didn't wait for fallout. I didn't care for the whispers that would surely spread before the night was over. I didn't need revenge served with fire. I served mine cold, measured, calm, and final. Later that night, I got a text from Erin. "I saw what you did. Thank you for not staying silent." I replied only, "We both deserved better." That was all. Julia never reached out again. The woman who once claimed to love me now had nothing left to say. No more manipulations, no more fake tears, no more rehearsed apologies. The curtain had dropped. The performance was over, and I finally walked out of the theater. People often think healing comes with a grand moment, an epiphany, a breakdown, a breakthrough. But for me it came slowly, quietly, like sunlight filtering through closed blinds, inch by inch, until one morning I realized I was no longer living in the dark. Weeks passed, then months. I moved into a small loft downtown. Nothing fancy, just mine. No shared closets, no empty promises lingering in the furniture. It was quiet, almost too quiet at first, but eventually I grew to appreciate the stillness. It gave me space to breathe, to think, to exist without being wrapped in someone else's lies. I didn't rush back into the world. I took time. Worked, ran in the mornings, read books I'd once abandoned, learned to cook something other than frozen dinners. I even started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. It wasn't about talent, it was about expression, about reclaiming the parts of me I'd sacrificed, trying to be enough for someone who never really saw me. One afternoon, I ran into Erin again. We were both standing in line at a bookstore of all places. She smiled when she saw me, genuine, warm. No bitterness, no pity. We talked, just for a few minutes. She said she'd been going to therapy, that she'd started writing again, that leaving Ryan was hard, but staying would have destroyed her. I nodded. I understood that more than she, knew we didn't exchange numbers. There was no romantic spark, just mutual respect. Two survivors acknowledging each other across the wreckage of what could have been, and that, strangely, felt enough. As time went on, the weight of the past began to loosen its grip. I stopped replaying the betrayal, stopped needing to understand why. I realized that some people don't love you for who you are. They love you for what you give, for what you represent, for what they can take, and when the giving stops. So, does their love? But that doesn't mean you stop. That doesn't mean you become smaller because someone else couldn't see your worth. In fact, sometimes it takes being broken to see the shape of who you really are. The last time I heard Julia's name, it came from an old mutual friend. She'd moved out of the city, tried to start fresh. There were rumors of more failed ventures, a new boyfriend, a messy breakup. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. She was no longer part of my story. She was just a chapter that ended. And me, I kept moving forward, one step, one breath, one morning at a time. Sometimes I still think about the night I read that message on her phone, the way the ground disappeared beneath me, the ache in my chest, the disbelief, the humiliation. But more than that, I remember the version of me who rose from that floor, who picked up the pieces without screaming, who looked betrayal in the eye and chose not to become it. That's the real victory, not the revenge, not the moment of public shame, but the quiet reclaiming of myself. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever been used or lied to, or left with your heart in shambles, know this: you don't have to become bitter to heal. You don't have to destroy someone to win. You just have to leave. With grace, with self-respect, with enough of yourself still intact to build again. I'm not who I was before Julia, but I'm not broken anymore either. I'm just honest. With myself, and maybe, just maybe, that's what real freedom feels like.